Hello and welcome back to the Eye on the U podcast, the Miami Herald's Miami Hurricanes podcast. I'm David Wilson, and I am joined, as always, on the other line by Susan Miller-Degnan, our Hurricanes beat writer here at the Herald. Took a couple weeks off for vacation. I am tan, rested, and ready. Susan back from the West Coast in Florida, rainy South Florida. It just started pouring right outside my window, which I'm sure means either it just poured outside your window or it will be pouring outside your window shortly. We're back. I was thinking this would be like a nice little summer patch-up episode. I'm sure a lot of people, on vacation, especially after, those long Heat and Panthers runs. I know I was fine taking a little break from being way too invested in sports every night for basically 2 months straight. I'm sure a lot of people, just kind of loosely following the news these days, especially University of Miami, where, it's quiet time right now. The busy June recruiting season is over. I was at Paradise Camp or Legends Camp, I should say, right before I went on vacation last week. We had the NBA draft last week, a couple of Canes getting picked, which is cool to see. A little bit of baseball news, which we will get to. Well, kind of a lot of bit of baseball news. Miami's got a new baseball coach, JT Arteaga. We'll get to that. But let's start with football because it's football, right? That's what people care about the most. And it's recruiting season. We've checked in every once in a while over the last few months here, kind of preaching patience with Miami's recruiting class. I kept pointing out that Miami didn't really start their recruiting didn't really take off until basically the calendar flipped to July. They got a couple guys right at the end of June, including, ironically, Jaden Rashado was the one last year who kind of kickstarted Miami's incredible recruiting run.
It was ironic.
So I was preaching patience because I know Miami wasn't racking up big recruits throughout the spring, thinking maybe it was going to happen in the summer. I don't know. I feel semi-vindicated-ish. Miami still probably losing a few more recruiting battles than you would like. They lose Ja'Cory Barney, wide receiver from Palmetto, to Nebraska over the last week. Justin Scott, a 5-star defensive lineman they were hoping to get, instead commits to Ohio State. But they followed up by getting Marquise Lightfoot, a top 100 defensive lineman out of Chicago, to commit. Finally, a little bit of momentum on the recruiting trail for Miami after it was a pretty bad week for them recruiting wise last week. They missed out on a guy. They lost a battle with Florida State, lost a battle in Nebraska, lost a battle to Ohio State. But all things considered, I think they're at number 20 as we talk right now. Obviously, it's changing every day. Susan, just kind of big picture, how do you feel about this Miami recruiting class? Not even necessarily looking at the names, but we talk a lot about, in recruiting, momentum is real. Obviously, reputations matter. Where's your confidence level at on Mario's ability to make, this might not be a top 5 class necessarily this year, but where's your confidence level at on Mario to get this class to where we expect it to be, which is probably around the top 10?
I have a lot of confidence in Mario. How could you not? I just have to go by the track record.
Right.
And he always ends up doing a good job. And also, you never know until they start playing. Everybody's great. Yeah, that's the problem. Everybody's great. Everybody's a 4-star. Not everybody, but whoever is, you just think they're going to be a big star. They're not always a big star. And sometimes the 3 stars are the big stars. And so you just got to hope that, Mario and then his assistants and Alonzo Highsmith and all those guys are doing a great job behind the scenes. I mean, I have confidence in that. And I'm a little bit of a cynic on recruiting. It's exciting. It's fun. A signing day is really fun, but you don't know anything till they get out there. All these kids we've written about being so great, being excited about and writing blurbs about and stuff. And sometimes they end up not being so great. So I just, I have confidence in Mario, but I think, they have to get on the field first. And, once they get there, then we'll really see. It's inexact science. It just is.
Yeah, I think actually you made a pretty good point there about just mentioning Alonzo Highsmith. Again, I think a lot of people look at this class and they've got, as we speak right now, they have 15 commits, according to the 24/7 Sports composite rankings.
Right.
Only 4 of them are 4-star recruits, which is not a very good ratio. History, I mean, a team in the modern recruiting ranking era, no one has ever won a national championship with less than half of their roster. No one is. You need more than 50% of your roster to be 4- and 5-star recruits to win a national championship. No one with less than that has ever won. Again, like recruiting, it's an inexact science, but that's a pretty telling number. Like you're just taking shots on big guys. The bust rate on, even if the bust rate on 4- and 5-star guys is high, the hit rate is like when those guys pan out, they're such difference makers. So you got to do better there. I do think one thing that's interesting, going back to the Alonzo point, is, and this was talking to Alonzo at Legends Camp a couple of weeks back. He was talking about, I asked him about just the idea that when he came in last year, I think it was right around this time, like end of June, beginning of July, when he officially started. Miami had already done a lot of the evaluations then. They'd already picked out the guys they were targeting. And they, it seems like that class they wound up with is going to be good. Obviously, we hadn't seen them on the field yet, but just what we saw in the spring and the guys they won those recruiting battles against, that's always telling. But now they're getting a lot of these, lower ranked guys. But Alonzo, who is this really good talent evaluator, is a big part of the process now in a way that he wasn't last year. He said it was such a whirlwind when he came in. They were as much evaluating the guys on the current roster as that was as much his responsibility as evaluating high school guys. And I think that could make a difference. Some of these 3-star, like Miami is still pretty far away from competing for a national championship. I know that's the end goal, but there's still that this roster needs to change a lot to get to that point. But the teams that are really Miami's peers right now are, like Wisconsin or like these teams that are kind of like perennial back of the top 25. When things go right, they can be a little better. Those teams have a lot of success in evaluating 3-star recruits and getting the most out of them. Miami has not done that particularly well in the past. I wonder how much of this is Alonzo has his fingerprints on a lot of this. Of course, the other part, like Miami's still going to wind up their ratio, which 4 out of 15 is like about 25%, a little more than 25%. Their blue chip ratio is going to be better than that by the end of this cycle. I don't know if it'll be 50-50, which is where you want to be, like kind of the bare minimum every cycle. But also, some of these guys will certainly probably rise in the rankings. A lot of the guys they have quite a few who are like outside the top 1,000, but they've also got quite a few guys who are like 500-ish. Those guys are very close to 5-star or 4-star status. And then a lot of their top targets still remain uncommitted, even though they lost out on a couple of them. So they got to do better at winning the reason that class last year was so good is because they beat Tennessee and Alabama and Oregon and like all the teams they were winning these recruiting battles against. Michigan. They were powerhouse programs that Miami has not necessarily won recruiting battles with. When I talked to Gino Torretta at Legends Camp, his big point was that's what tells you that this thing is going well when you can win those recruiting battles. If Alabama wants a guy, that guy's probably pretty good. Miami's got to get back to that to get to that next level. But again, like you said, Mario's got the track record. Guys' rankings change a lot. I think the rankings are kind of more fluid than ever right now because, I think the pandemic changed a lot in terms of like recruiting and camps and all that kind of stuff. 7-on-7 has really blown up. There are more recruiting services than ever now with On3 like really established. And NIL makes it, a lot of the recruiting rankings historically have been based on college coaches' evaluations, right? When people joke about the Alabama bump, but it's real. When a guy commits to Alabama, if Alabama wants a guy, he's probably really good. He goes up in the recruiting rankings. NIL has probably changed a little bit of that, where guys are going to different types of schools. But generally, I think Miami finally getting a little bit of momentum. Like I said, if they can win a few more of these recruiting battles in July and win some games in the fall, I still think this class should be, I'm not expecting to be as good as last year's class, but I think could still be top 10 or so. And I think we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. They really went in on the offensive line last year. You can see they're going in on the defensive line this year. And that's going to be kind of more important than everything is, I think, filling the holes in the roster.
Yep, agree. I love that he goes for the front lines.
Yeah.
You've got to. And hopefully they have enough depth on the offensive line. That so many guys got injured last year.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, there's so many factors which go into, a successful season. And I think he's going after the right positions. I think he'd like some really super receivers. But we'd love to get a 5-star receiver in there, right? That would be kind of fun.
Yeah, they definitely need a guy like that, given what we've seen at that position the last couple of years.
For some reason, there, it hasn't happened. So I think they start with I think they get those. We're talking about 2024 class, of course, and this class, this season will affect that as well. As I do believe that if UM looks like they're improving, as all these analysts say they're going to, then they become a sexier program.
Right.
So I think some of it, some people would disagree, but I do believe the season plays a part in recruiting.
Yeah, I think so, definitely, especially because I think with NIL, I think commitments are, a verbal commitment was only ever so firm, but I think with NIL, verbal commitments are less firm than ever, where things can really change at the last minute. Even with a couple of these recruiting battles Miami lost, I think they felt good about their position going into the days and weeks ahead of it, and then stuff changes. One other just like random little detail I wanted to mention. Miami has done a good job of getting St. Thomas Aquinas kids committed, which, one school is not all important in South Florida, right? There's too much good talent, but that team's won 4 straight state championships and more state championships than everyone else in the state. And Miami had not really gotten a lot of commits from that school. And Mike Harley obviously was a great cane, and then Avery Huff, who never really panned out at Miami. But other than that, it's been a struggle for them there. Obviously, this original signature guy in this class was Chance Robinson, 4-star wide receiver from there. And then in the last 2 weeks, they get 2 DBs from there, Ryan Mack and Romanus Frederick Jr. So I think definitely good to get a little foothold there. And they've done a good job. I think, they don't have a lot of like flashy names necessarily locally. Chance Robinson, of their 4-star recruits, he's the only local guy, but they've got in total already 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 local commits already committed, and all kind of guys who, like Dalen Russell is one of the lowest ranked guys in the class. We talked about him when he committed back in May. He was our player of the year in Dade County. So I think a lot, like I've liked the foundation of this class a lot, just in terms of like get some local stars, some hidden gems, some high upside guys. A lot of those 3-star guys, they've got 4 guys ranked between 500 and 700. Like those guys could easily rise to that 4-star status with good senior seasons. But they've got to win a couple of those recruiting battles like they did last year, right? That's what got everyone excited when they were beating out mega programs for 5-star recruits, top 100 recruits, 4-star recruits. So got to get back to that. Let's switch gears to baseball. Draft coming up this weekend. Pivotal time, obviously. Quite a few Miami players will be selected in the first couple days of this draft. But the big news, of course, happened last week. JD Arteaga becomes the new coach at Miami, getting the promotion from pitching coach after Gino Damari steps down. What do you make of this move? It seems a little polarizing around among Miami fans. Program hasn't won or gotten to super regionals in quite some time, but
Right.
but still a factor every year. So what do you make of this move?
I mean, I'm pro. I know a lot of the fans, the vocal fans, of course, complaining, or it was UM's opportunity to get fresh blood, get new people, new ways of doing things in a program. I like the move. JD Arteaga, of course, I'm an old timer and I've known him for a long time. So he's been there 21 years. He was a major star with the program. He's grown up with it. It doesn't mean that everybody needs to be from UM. It's like the same thing with football. You don't need to be from UM. It's just that this guy, and it's more than just paying your dues. Yes, he's paid his dues, but I think he's a very smart guy. He's seen a lot of college baseball. He's had a lot of good pitchers. I know they've had some problems like other teams with injuries and things like that, but I think it was the right decision to make him the coach. I mean, I don't know. I've read some things that I don't know if it was D1 baseball. I don't know who said that the Duke coach turned down the job or something like that, was offered it, but I don't know personally if that's true. But I like JD, and UM has had a good, think about it. I mean, Jim Morris won 2 national championships, but let's face it, the very end of his career, we've gone through that, was not good. The last 2
missed the tournament the last 2 years, right?
Yeah, he was there and they missed the tournament. And in the last 5 years, and I know Gino's gone, but the last 2 years, they were the number 6 national seed last year and the number 10 national seed this year. And I think there's only 2 teams in the nation that were top 10 seeds 2 years in a row, UM and Stanford. And JD is a big part of that. They've, the last 5 years, Miami has the best ACC winning percentage over the last 5 years, and the second best overall winning percentage in the entire conference. I think, as you told me before, the problem has been in the postseason. I know that's the bottom line. I understand it, but it's not like they haven't had good teams. I don't know what the answer is. We've gone through that as far as pitching. I don't know if they made a mistake in not pitching the number 1 guy at first, but anyway, they are losing some pitchers as far as, they did name the Nova Southeastern coach is now the new UM pitching coach, which is interesting because I wasn't sure if JD was going to kind of do everything.
Right.
Las Gutierrez, who played in Miami, and was 4 years at Division II Nova Southeastern, is becoming the pitching coach. And I'm glad. I very interested to see what happens. I think JD will do some things differently. I do. And he's just been biding his time, and we'll see what happens with that. I know they're going to lose Andrew Walters, obviously, to the draft.
Yep.
Their all-star closer, and they're going to lose their best player, Yo-Yo Morales, who's going to be a first rounder. They're going to lose, right? CJ Kafis.
Yeah.
Is going to be drafted maybe higher than Andrew Walters, maybe lower than Andrew Walters, but I would say in the maybe second day at least of the draft.
Yeah. Morales should be day 1, first round. Seems like a lock.
Yeah, he's
and then
a lock.
You got kind of Andrew Walters, Kafis, Zach Levinson, Alejandro Rosario all seem like day 2 picks potentially.
Maybe
a couple other guys who could sneak their way in. Dominic Patelli.
Day 2. Don Patelli could go. There's all different kinds of guys. Their catcher, Carlos Perez,
So
has
they're going to
won.
lose a lot, but so is
Well,
every good team, pretty much.
Here's the thing. There's some guys that have like that catcher, Carlos Perez, has one more year of eligibility, right?
Right.
So
He doesn't get picked until the 20th round or whatever.
But whenever you get to the last year in college baseball, you're kind of screwed. You have absolutely no leverage.
Right. Yes.
They can offer you next to nothing. You got to take it if you want to play. In a way, you kind of got to take it, I guess. They did have Carson Ligon entered the transfer portal, which is a blow.
Yeah.
He had 2 more years of eligibility. A pitcher, a rising junior, the top pitcher. I think batters were batting like 237 or 238 against him. So, it's a long time till next season, but I like the pick. I don't think it was. I don't know.
I get both sides of the argument. I totally understand they'll want to see flesh blood. It's been the same people running the program for how long was Jim Morris there? JT Arteaga's been there a quarter of a century, basically. It's the same guys have been there for a really long time.
But they weren't that wasn't the head guy. Yes.
Right. It's different than when Jim Morris left. That program was a floundering program, right? They hadn't made the tournament in 2 years.
Oh, definitely.
JD Arteaga is taking over a program that is, it's not one of the best in the country, but it's a really good program right now. They're perennially toward the top of the ACC, toward the top of the country. They've been in the tournament pretty much every year since Gino took over. Every year except the COVID year, right? And then have hosted regionals almost every year too, and like you said, been a top 10 seed in the last 2 years. So I get the argument for try something different, but I also think this program is not failing right now. Yes, they're losing in the tournament, but baseball is weird, and I think there's something to be said for JT Arteaga. Is obviously super plugged in locally. And it always feels like the big problem this team has is it always feels like they're run out of pitchers, right? In the tournament. They don't necessarily have quite enough arms, either in the bullpen or starters. And we've talked a lot about Miami's issues as a private school that just makes it hard to recruit. I think you got to really nail. I think you have to nail local recruiting. Right. It's hard to get guys to come across the country if they're not on a scholarship, right? To come play at Miami and spend a lot of money on tuition. Yes. I think it's an easier sell for local guys who have a connection to the program and have a connection to JT Arteaga, who again has been around for forever. He's been in Miami his entire life, basically. Yeah,
exactly. And played and starred. So one of the best pitchers there.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of excited for next season. I'm always excited for baseball. And they've had really nice seasons.
Yeah.
Not good
baseball.
Enough.
It's weird. But all right. I think we can close things out there. You can follow Susan on Twitter at @smillerdegnan. Again, quiet time, but we got some, football recruiting stuff still going on, and football season will be here before we know it. Less than a month probably till camp. So we don't have an official camp schedule yet, but
first week in August.
It tends to be the first week in August. So probably less than a month away. So we'll be back before you know it with that. You can follow me on Twitter at DBWilson2. I'll be covering the MLB draft this weekend, so I'll be keeping an eye on all those Canes and future Canes. Obviously, quite a few of them. That's always the kind of the big X factor, right? Is do those guys, Adrian Santana from Doral, who's committed to Miami, is probably going to go in round 2. What does he end up doing? A couple other local guys.
That's the shame of it. They always have
it's always tricky. The couple kids from Archbishop, McCarthy, one's committed to Miami. He could be a later round pick. So you never know. That's always the big X factor is do those guys wind up sticking? So we'll see. But anyway, thanks as always for listening, and we'll talk to you guys next week.